Hey YouTube, Jake Kilroy here, back at you. We're going to get back on beating this drill press vise to death. Working on some stuff that requires me to get this screw in the lathe. So bar gotta go. That's the first thing. So we're gonna obliterate that. Then we're gonna cut a hex. What I want to end up with, instead of a captured bar like this has here, what I want to end up with is a 3/4 inch hex like the Kurt vise, so that I can use a removable wrench. This is sometimes helpful. Certainly, depending on how you have the vise oriented on the table, it can get to be a problem. So this is going to go away. We're going to cut a hex here, and then we're going to move on with our kind of a test we're going to do on a potential way to make a new female screw bushing for this weird pitch square thread. So let's suit up and get this baby knocked out, and then we'll let the milling machine to cut the hex. So let's get with it. Oh, and I got the stock for the base plates. Of course, I ordered 1.5 inch stock for some reason, and this is 1 3/4 inch wide. But the good news is the 1.5 inch will still work. The 1.5 inch will still incorporate all the fastener locations. Just won't be quite as wide on the bed, but no big deal. We can make the new plates for the bed out of this stock right here. So let's get with it. All right, we've cut off the offending stub, and now we're going to face this off. Okay, what we're going to do right now is we're going to center drill and tap this for a 1/2 by 13 stud. Then we're going to take this coupling nut and we are going to run it onto that 1/2 by 13 stud with a copious amount of red Loctite. We're going to call that a day, and that will give us a 7/8 hard 7/8 hex to replace the Tommy bar setup that was in there, and I think it'll be a vast improvement. This is one of those Tico nuts, so it's powdered metal product. It's hard as hell. So let's go ahead and get set up to drill that. Right. That's easy enough. All right, here's a 27/64 drill. Drill it about 1 inch. Push and we'll be good. Well, I'm going to tell you, the core of that is soft stuff. Get a center in the tailstock. All right, we've got the hole tapped. We've got it cleaned out, cleaned it with acetone. We got just a El Cheapo grade 2 bolt here that we are going to slather heavily with the red stuff. Run it up in here. The bolt also was cleaned heavily with acetone. We'll run it in here. Give it a good crank. All right. Gonna let that dry up. So we'll let that dry, then we'll part this off, clean into those threads up, then we'll slather that down with Loctite and we'll run this on and we'll be done with this part right here. So that'll be tomorrow. I'm calling it an evening and just gonna let this sit here and cure, get a good cure overnight. You guys have a good one. Parting off action there. Okay, a little bit here. Did I mention the camera's in the way? With all things Loctite, cleanliness is next to godliness. So, a little acetone soaked rag. Slather liberally. There we go. Let that cure up. We are set. Okay, YouTube. Here we are. We've got our hex conversion complete. Quite robust, by the way. And now we are going to endeavor to try something that I have never tried before. Little background. Many of you are probably users, or at least viewers, on some of the machining boards out there, particularly practicalmachinist.com and homeshopmachinist.net. Links down below. There's a gentleman that goes by the name of Evan. He's Canadian. He, I believe, is most active on the homeshopmachinist.net now. He at one time was very active on both boards. Very, very intelligent man. Comes up with some very unique solutions. And back in 2010, 5 years ago, he came up with an example of making lead screw nuts out of Delrin. Delrin being the DuPont trade name for a copolymer plastic called Alzmetall. Boom. And we are going to endeavor to replicate Evan's technique of basically thermoforming Alzmetall around the existing screw to form a nut for this vise. So what I've done is, by the way, links to the original story in the listing as well. I'm by no means trying to take credit for the origination of this idea. I will say that Alzmetall or Delrin nuts, lead screw nuts, are commercially available by a variety of manufacturers, and it is a very popular material. It's a very strong plastic. Many of you have probably used it in various projects. It cuts, threads, turns very nicely. Kind of like UHMW, except better. So what I did was I took a piece of 2-inch black Alzmetall here, and I bored a hole through the middle, 3/4 inch hole. By the way, the best type of bit to use for this is not a traditional drill bit, but a spade bit made for wood. Take a spade bit, cut the chip breaking tips off of the outer edges, grind them out, and go at it. Use a fairly slow RPM. You don't want it to get hot, okay? Hot meaning anything over about 275 degrees, 250, 275 degrees. So I did that. I took a 2-inch piece, I bored a hole, and then I split it on the bandsaw. And what I'm going to do now, I took the lead screw, the screw in this case, I cleaned a section thoroughly with a brass brush using acetone and a brass brush, and I cleaned a section very thoroughly on the screw. I've then coated it with a silicone mold release agent. We are going to place all of this in a vise with the 2 sections pressed up against the screw like so. We are going to take a heat gun, not a torch. We're going to start to apply heat to the screw while we tighten the vise. The entire process, according to Evan's original posting, should take 10 to 15 minutes. You don't want it to get too hot. And then once that's taken place, once it has completely compacted back together and basically become a solid again, we will let the entire thing cool. We will chuck this whole thing up in the lathe once again. We will turn the OD of this to size and shape for the vise. Then we will turn it around, put this in the lathe, chuck, and we will turn the screw out, which might be a fun process to watch. Foul language may ensue. Once this is all done, we'll mount the new Alzmetall Delrin lead screw in the vise, and we'll give her a go. For reference, Nook Industries, the people that sell the Acme threaded rod, also sell Acetall or Delrin Acme nuts, pre-made, all sorts of configurations and sizes and pitches and 1, 2, 3, 4, however many starts you want. They sell these things. And for a 1x5, for a 1" by 5 thread Acme nut, they quote the strength of the nut at over 2,000 pounds. Well, if that's the case, and we can even achieve a significant fraction of that strength, this ought to work great. Regardless of whether or not it works, we're going to give it a shot, and we're going to try it, and we're going to see how it turns out, because that's what it's all about here, learning. We're going to learn, figure out if this stuff's going to work. And if this works for me, there's no reason it can't work for you. According to Evan, it worked for him on his first pass. He was just pulling this stuff out of thin air, you know, kind of, and it worked great. And he uses Acetall nuts on his homemade CNC mill, and with great results. So we are going to give this a shot. I've already got this piece ready to go, already got it cut. I'm gonna get everything set up in the vise, get my heat source over here, my heat gun, not torch, and get the camera set up, and we're gonna give this shit a fly. Now, if prepare for the unexpected, right? I have no idea if this is gonna work or not, but we're gonna give it a go. Okay, guys and gals, here you go. The Acetall screw, cleaned section here, coated in the silicone. Heat gun. Heat is on. Okay, I'm not one for the selfie style, but that didn't work with a shit. So we're gonna try something else. All right. Since our first pass of impatience was an abject failure, I've made another blank. Set the nut up here, and I've just had the heat gun running on it for the past 10-15 minutes, just to try to get some heat into it. And then now we're going to try to go ahead and get it set up in the V jaws like we did last time with the clamp. And of course we're going to have to be careful working with all this stuff because it's all hot. And we'll see how it goes. right, here's attempt number 2. Took a lot longer than the first time. And I'm just going to leave it set up here in these V blocks and let it cool completely in this setup, and then we will come back and turn it to size on the screw here as soon as that's taken place. So hopefully this one works out better. All right, our second attempt has cooled. Let's go ahead and unpackage it here. Right. I don't know how well this is going to hold up to turning, but let's stick this baby in the lathe and see what we can get out of it. All right, we got our second attempt chucked up here between centers on the screw. We're just going to go ahead and skim this down to a cylinder and see what we get. Alright, that's cleaned up. Looks pretty good, actually. Still way oversized on this dimension here. Basically, this dimension needs to be 1 1/4. We're at 146. So I got to take 210 thou off of there, so I'm going to keep carving that down. And all right, right back with you. So we are turned down to OD. Obviously I haven't cleaned the ends up, it's way too long, but you know, the OD of this looks pretty darn good. If we can get this off the screw, and that's a big if, and make sure that make sure that this thing will go up and down here, this screw, then we may have something that we can test and actually use. So let me change things around so we can work on unchucking this. All right, getting it off wasn't pretty. You can probably guess what those marks come from. A pair of channel locks. But I gotta be honest, I don't know how much you can see up in there. Let me get a flashlight. The threads look pretty darn good. There's really only one spot in there where there's a little air pocket and there's a thread that's not formed well, but if anything, the problem with these right here is they fit too tight. I got to figure out a way to loosen them up. All right, YouTube. I think we have beat the plastic Delrin nut process to death. There you go. honestly, if anything, it's too good. There's absolutely zero clearance in there, as you might expect. So what I did was, and I don't have a tap, obviously it matches this. I took my screw, the last few threads of the screw in here that are up in the jaw and you never actually get used. And I took this last one and I slid it up here with an abrasive blade. And then I worked it back and forth through the screw to loosen it up. And I still got more of it to do. I mean, 'cause it's still tight. That's the one issue with this process is there's absolutely no slack in here at all. Could be good and bad. If you need an application where you don't want any slop, like for a lathe cross slide for a smaller machine, for instance, or if you made some half nuts out of this stuff in this process, you would end up with an extremely precise screw with absolutely no slack in the drivetrain at all. It's there, right? You can see where it got chewed up and getting it off the screw. That's the hard part. I think what I would do, spend more time doing next time if I ever try this again, is polish the entire length of the screw. Clean it as finely as you can. I would recommend like a really fine wire wheel or a loose buffing flannel maybe with some really fine compound to really get down in there. I would polish this thing up to within an inch of its life, right? To where it is just absolutely glossy, shiny, mirror-like surface finish. Then I would wax the ever-living dog out of it with something like a hard Carnauba furniture wax maybe, or a beeswax. I'd wax the snot out of it to where I got a little wax buildup in there. Then I would apply a mold release compound and go through the process of making the screw. You got to get a lot of heat. I don't know if it's the Delrin that I've got, if this is somehow different than the Delrin that Evan was using, but I had to put a ton of heat into that screw in order to get this to actually work. And I'm not using a heat gun. The gun I'm using is actually a paint stripping gun. It is a lot hotter than, puts out a lot more heat than your typical paint stripping gun. It's very, very hot. But I still had to let, as you saw, I had it sitting right here, and I had the heat gun on it for 10 minutes before I ever even came over here and started working on it. I mean, my tabletop was discoloring. You know, the steel on the tabletop was discoloring due to the heat from the heat gun. And it still required a great deal more heat to get it to work. You know, because what you're trying to achieve here is you're trying to melt the interior around the screw while leaving the exterior relatively unchanged. So you just want to sneak up on it. Neat process, works, produces a hell of a screw. If I can get it loose enough, if I can loosen it up enough in here to make it actually usable. It'd be usable now the way I have it now, but you basically would have to turn the screw in and out both directions with a wrench at all times. There's just no slop, no free play at all. You couldn't put a wrench on it and spin your finger around like this, right? Not gonna work. But I will give you an update. You will get updates on this in future videos. If I cannot get it to work properly, to loosen up enough to work as the screw, or at least try it in here, I don't know how it's gonna work, then we're back to the bronze and we're gonna go Acme, right? So that's our backup plan. Next video, replacing the little bed pieces here, replacing the jaw inserts, and continuing work on the moving jaw. So we're gonna try to whip this thing up. I just got kind of distracted with the prospect doing this this thermoforming. That's always something I wanted to try, and boy, it works. I mean, you look up in there, and the thread is perfection, right? Good and bad. It's just a little too perfect right now. So anyway, comments, ridicule, suggestions, questions, whatever, always appreciated. Likes and subscriptions, always appreciated. You guys be safe in the shop, and I'll be back with you soon.